Today, we pause to remember those whose stories are often left untold, the Vietnamese civilians who endured unimaginable suffering during one of the most devastating conflicts of the 20th century. Behind the political rhetoric and military strategies were real people: mothers, fathers, children, grandparents, ordinary human beings caught in extraordinary circumstances. In villages across Vietnam, hospitals overflowed with civilians bearing wounds that would never fully heal. Farmers who had known only the rhythm of rice paddies suddenly found themselves victims of crossfire. Children learned to recognize the sound of approaching aircraft before they could properly write their names. Medical workers, often women, worked tirelessly in makeshift clinics, treating injuries with limited supplies while bombs fell around them. Their courage transformed bandages into hope, and their compassion became a light in humanity's darkest hours. Countless Vietnamese civilians found themselves imprisoned not for crimes, but for existing in a war zone where the lines between combatant and non-combatant were blurred. Innocent became tragically blurred. Families were separated, often forever. Villages that had stood for generations were abandoned overnight, their inhabitants becoming refugees in their own homeland. These displaced souls carried only what they could hold: photographs, a child's toy, memories of home, as they searched for safety that seemed always just beyond reach. Perhaps no group paid a higher price than Vietnamese children who witnessed horrors no young mind should ever process. They learned to sleep through the sound of gunfire, to comfort crying siblings when parents couldn't return, to find food in the rubble of their former neighborhoods. Yet even in this darkness, their resilience shone through. They played games in bomb shelters, shared scarce meals with strangers, and somehow maintained the beautiful innocence that war tried so hard to steal. Vietnamese women bore an extraordinary burden during these years. When men went to fight or were taken away, women became everything: breadwinners, protectors, teachers, nurses. They hid their families in tunnels, foraged for food in dangerous territories, and made impossible choices to keep their loved ones alive. Pregnant women gave birth in bunkers, and mothers shielded their children's eyes from sights that would haunt their own dreams forever. What emerges from these stories is not just tragedy, but an incredible testament to human endurance. Vietnamese civilians showed the world that even in war's cruelest moments, people choose compassion over hatred, hope over despair. They shared rice with hungry neighbors, adopted orphaned children, and rebuilt communities from ashes, not once, but countless times. Today, as we honor these civilians, we do more than remember the past. We acknowledge that behind every conflict statistic was a person who laughed, loved, dreamed, and suffered. We recognize that true courage often belongs not to soldiers, but to ordinary people doing extraordinary things to preserve human dignity in impossible circumstances. The Vietnamese civilians who endured this war teach us that humanity's greatest victories are not won on battlefields, but in the quiet moments when people choose to help rather than harm, to build rather than destroy, to love rather than hate. Their stories must not be forgotten, their sacrifice must not be in vain, and their example must inspire us to build a world where no civilian, anywhere, must again endure such suffering. In remembering them, we honor not just their memory, but our shared humanity. Among these civilians were countless unsung heroes whose acts of kindness transcended war's boundaries. Teachers continued classes in bomb shelters, ensuring education survived when buildings did not. Elderly villagers became storytellers, preserving cultural traditions through ancient tales of resilience. Doctors treated patients regardless of allegiance, upholding their sacred oath to heal above political divisions. Religious leaders opened temple and church doors to anyone seeking sanctuary, offering not just physical shelter, but spiritual comfort to souls torn by conflict. These sacred spaces became islands of peace where former enemies could sit together in shared grief and hope. The war's end did not end the suffering. Families spent decades searching for missing loved ones, clutching photographs more precious than gold. Communities cleared unexploded ordnance from their fields, each step risking death but necessary for their children's future. Survivors carried invisible wounds, mothers who jumped at sudden sounds, children who hoarded food years later, grandparents waking from nightmares decades afterward. Yet they also carried something else, an unbreakable spirit refusing to let hatred define their legacy.